Welcome to Sales is Not a Dirty Word, the show that proves if it's a fit, it's a fact. I'm your host, innovative sales coach Aleasha Bahr, the creator of the Black Sheep Sales Method. If you're a service provider selling your own service and you're ready to sell differently than the mainstream status quo to convert 8 out of 10 sales conversations without having to act like a douchebag, then this is for you. If you want to know more about the Black Sheep Sales Method, then go to AleashaBahr.com. This episode is with Luis Carnejo. He's a driven entrepreneur with a remarkable journey. Hailing from Venezuela, he earned a D1 full ride for soccer, later graduating and diving into event management and building a network of boutique fitness studios, the largest boasting 1,000 members. His ventures led to the creation of a content agency, which evolved into fractional content teams as a service and now a local podcast studio for rent. Luis is also the mastermind behind the successful podcast Content is Profit, with over 500 episodes and a proud member of the HubSpot podcast network. And Luis, I love Luis, you guys, because he's a black sheep. He definitely is edgy for the niche that he's in, which you know I'm a sucker for. But also, he loves doing things in a way that feels like it's in integrity and aligned. And what he's going to talk about with us today is how he generated $600,000 in revenue over the last 4 years by using a method that is very aligned and in integrity and has to do with podcasting. So I'm so excited you're here. Welcome to the big show. Sales is not a dirty word. Let's
Thank you, Aleasha.
go.
Thank you for that welcome. I'm stoked to be here, and I like being called edgy. So thank you.
You guys are definitely edgy, I would say.
A little bit different.
It's great. Like, we need it.
Yeah.
I will tell you, anyone listening, I went on their show, which was a fantastic experience. I mean, 500 episodes in, and their production company, it's going to be good.
It better be.
It's very lively. Feels like I went to the club.
Let's go. That's the experience we want to create.
It's a party. And a fun fact for any Americans listening, his name's Luis and so is his brother's.
Yeah.
It's Luis and Luis.
Copy paste. I mean, he's definitely the cheaper version of both of us, but that's really okay. He gets the full beard and the deep voice and, you know, the good looks and the height. And then, you know, I'm the one stuck.
Oh, stop. Yeah, he's the copy paste. Are you saying he's the copy paste?
We always tell him that he's adopted. So, you know, I don't know. We'll see. We'll let people decide.
Siblings are so mean. Okay. Well, so Luis, we were talking before about a method that I have heard about before, that people use a podcast to bring in clients. The way that I've heard it done always sounds a little bait and switch, skeezy. And you do it in such a different way that's in really great integrity and is also such a win-win for you no matter what, whether the client comes on or not. So can you give us a little background into the experience that is the most common experience when people try to do this, and then how you guys developed your
absolutely. So way back when we launched the show in 2020, we actually launched as a Hail Mary to our little local agency business that we had at the time. It was just me and my brother freelancing for small local businesses. You know, like you mentioned, my past is in boutique fitness studios. So they were my network, they were my connections, the members, you know, they were local business owners. And as a side gig, we would just go produce videos for them on their shops, right? And we created this framework, which is the one that we still execute today for production, which we're like, hey, you know, we're going to save you a ton of time, a ton of effort, all this stuff. And when COVID happened, every single business closed their doors. And we only had one online client at the time. And we basically had 60 days worth of runway. And we were like, crap, what do we do? And Josh 40, by the way, is the name of this person. He challenged us to do a podcast because he was doing 3 podcasts a week at the time, and we were producing his stuff. And he's like, why don't you guys start one? And we're like, why don't we start one? And, you know, a year earlier we tried, but there was a lot of friction. You hear me talk about a lot of friction in production, all this stuff. what we have to do is the setup. This is the we were doing it in Fonzie's room, and we kind of put all the equipment in the closet, right? And that's a story for a different day. But we're like, okay, I guess, Hail Mary, we don't have nothing to lose, in 60 days, whatever. If nothing ever happens, worst thing can happen is like we go get a job, right? And then we'll just restart and restructure. And at the time, we're doing so many things, kind of like how we do now, but just very niche in content. But at the time, it was like email campaigns and funnels and content recording and all these all things, right? And it was just really messy. So when we started the show, the first 20 episodes, it was just me and my brother documenting our struggles and the things that we were doing. And then we quickly find out that we're like running out of content. So either we needed to learn more faster or talk to the people that know the things, asking them about their secrets. And that's literally what we decided to do. So we started bringing people into our platform from our personal networks, right? The masterminds that we were in, and like the Facebook groups that we were in, and we're like, oh, this person like talks about XYZ, we want to learn about that. Why don't we bring him? And after maybe 2 interviews, I think it was, the person on the other side of the screen after the conversation, because they had a great experience. And by the way, the experience that you lived last week, I think it was, like 500 plus episodes, is the same experience as in episode 20 when we first had that first guest. It hasn't changed. Which
fun. You just nailed it from the beginning.
Well, we're like, it works, so why change it? I know it has evolved quite a bit. It used to be a Facebook live show. That's how we actually launched it. And then the audio was not edited at all and going into the platforms. Right now, there's a little bit more production value in there, but the flow and how we interact with our relationship with the guest hasn't changed. And that person was like, well, I really had a great experience. So why don't you guys tell me what you do? And they approached us. And we're like, oh. And we're like, crap, what do we do? So we started asking them questions like, well, we our main thing is like content production, and we do fractional content teams. We weren't calling it fractional content teams at the time, but we can turn your long form into short form. And he's like, that's exactly what I'm looking for. And that's a client that still works with us 4 years later, right? Which is really incredible. And we're like, wow, we've struggled so much to find opportunities to talk to the decision maker or somebody that could potentially move an opportunity forward. And our second person that we brought in, they asked us. So that's a big indicator. So why don't we craft an experience that facilitates that question or that conversation? So that's exactly what we did, and we committed to 3 episodes a week. And out of the first 100 episodes, I have to do the full data, because there was a period in there where we kind of like slacked on the process. We got too relaxed. But out of the first 100 episodes, 85% of the people that we asked the question of like, hey, we would love to show you a little bit of the behind the scenes. Would you like to check it out for feedback? Or if you have a team that can use it, or if you need a team, you can let us know if you need a team. 85% said yes to that. And then out of that 85%, 25% says, let's work together, right? Which was really incredible for our first year doing this. And that allowed us to actually cross our first like 6 figures of actually cash in the bank, and pay that finance for our team, that finance for our first office, that finance like all these things, and just like the beginning of the dream after 4 years of trying different things and imposter syndrome and all these things. So obviously this process and show has a special place in our heart. So that was the beginning of Contents Profit, on how we build relationships. And since then, the relationships that we built through the show, had put us in stages to speak about our processes, our frameworks, have put us in masterminds, have put us in rooms with people that we've never thought, we were gonna work with. One, I remember that first person that told us to go podcast, Josh, he had a coach at the time, a personal coach. And we were like, man, one day we'll work with that person. And through this last 4 years, I've been able to work with that person in many projects and, together. So same thing, just like connecting with you, Aleasha, for example, at the Capshovians Live, or now in this podcast, right? So it's not just selling the service or selling your thing. It's about how can you generate consistently conversations and opportunities for your business or your personal life, right? So hopefully that was a solid enough introduction to it and causes a little bit of questions.
It was super solid. And there are some things that I really want to point out about it that are so valuable. One of the reasons this works so well is the law of reciprocity, which sometimes I talk about. When you offer an opportunity to somebody, they feel, I don't want to say obligated, maybe it's a little bit of a strong word, but they feel motivated to get you back, right? So not that they're going to buy your offer, but they're like, oh, this person did me a solid. Yeah, I want to see behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
And also having this podcast episode done with them, I mean, there's so many built-in opportunities to follow up and email them about it and like to promote it, and these just built-in communication touch points that can be a really powerful way to restart or continue a conversation. Is that what you has that sometimes been your experience, that those going touch points do help move things
absolutely
forward?
So I mean, over time, the first version of this process was we jump off the conversation. It was a live show, and then we had like a little behind the scenes, like not recorded, and at that point we were like, hey, I don't know if this is for you, but we do X and we would love to show you. Or we also ask like, what can we do for you, right? And they'll be like, oh, can you introduce me to XYZ, if they already know the network. And then the last thing is like, well, now that you know and experience the show, because it is a little bit different, who can you refer to be a guest? And we're very proud to say that we're I'll say 95% referral based, right? Every single guest tells us like who is a good guest based on the criteria that we tell them. And that criteria is to fulfill like good guests, good content, also level of a business, and maybe also need for the service. That was like really strong at the beginning. Now it has changed a little bit since we joined the Hotspot Podcast Network. But initially it was like fully on like, if that person, do we think it could be a potential like business relationship, whether that's like referral based or the service or different things. So we were very upfront with that, and people really appreciated it, right? And we would just ask those questions after they had a good experience. And we've noticed there's some people that we didn't really resonate as in the interview, and we would not ask those questions, right? We would like understand, be like, maybe that's a person that we don't resonate with their messaging, or we don't resonate with them, and that's okay. I mean, their message, we're here to produce some kind of content that's useful for the audience, but maybe that's somebody that we might not fulfill, conversation about business, for example, right? So that was like initially, that was it, and that's where it stopped. And then after that, obviously, we're like, how can we continue to add value? That's always like the premise. So then we started sending them guest assets, for example, because we're a production company, right? Like that's our product. So we're like, hey, by the way, our team created these for you. So then we'll send them with their branding and their stuff. And then we're like, hey, do you get a chance to check out the assets? And then it was always searching for like that opportunity to continue talking about content. And eventually, if we track back the conversations, it was always like, oh, let me introduce you to somebody that might need your services, because I don't. And that might have been like a good referral or not so good referral, depends. And also keep in mind, we were stress testing that new product that we created, right? 4 years ago, clipping was not a thing. Right now, it's something that you can do out of your phone, and that's totally okay. But then it allows us also to build our frameworks and to build the things that we talk about today. And to the point that now, we were able to buy another business and work through those things because of those opportunities that came through that. The guy that sold us this studio was a guest of the show, by the way. So it was pretty crazy. And he's like, I can only think about you guys when it comes to this stuff, even though he had offers on the table. Right, so pretty awesome system, and then obviously over time you can develop into a more systematic way to continue to do this.
Yeah, that's great. I love that you broke down, kind of the evolution of it there. And I mean, a big part of why this works so well for you is that you have such a warm, inviting presence.
Thank you.
So, and this is one of the reasons I love Latin American culture. I lived for a summer in Costa Rica, I lived for a summer in Mexico, and I lived for 6 months in Spain. Yeah. And the people are so much more, I don't know if the word is like, they're just warmer than Americans. So the experience that somebody has, like, it can't just feel like you're bringing them on the podcast for a sales conversation. Yeah. And that is an alternative. Well, wait, before I ask that, I want to ask, why is it different now that you are on the HubSpot network? Like, why do you not look for people who are necessarily in need of your services?
Yeah, so a couple things. I mean, still is. There has to be a little bit of a balance, right? So when we talk a lot about the two audiences, right? You have the front-end audience of a show, which is the people listening or consuming your content, right? For either value or entertainment, right? They're listening to you as an authority figure. And then you also have the back-end audience, we call, which is number one, your guest, because they're also listening to your message, right? So in the interviews, right, whenever we had something with you, we'll we're not interviewing you, we're having a conversation. And that's the first frame, right? Those are the glasses that we put on. We're like, hey, we're experts on this, we're bringing another expert, and we're just sharing experiences, right? So in the eyes of the first audience, we're both on the same level, same pedestal, right? What happens a lot of the time in those interview shows is that you have the host who's only asking questions, so they're not positioning themselves as also an expert, right? They're just learning, and that might be totally okay at the beginning of the show, right? Because you might want to be that reporter person that is learning and helping their audience with that. After a while, we realized we also have things to say about this thing, so maybe like we can challenge those ideas, or we can explain our point of view, and then that started building some authority and rapport with our own audience. And we started seeing some feedback on solo episodes that we would do, and some of those solo episodes, on the data that we were receiving, was like people were listening the show a lot more than the interviews, for example. So how we joined the network, I think it was a mix of elements, but we definitely used our system to be able to do that, right? And we actually brought 3 back-to-back conversations with key players in the decision making of the network, and we fed them through the experience. First of all, without expectations. We were like, man, they're about to make a decision. We applied. Why don't we bring him on and find out more about the network? If it's not for us, it might be something really useful for the community and the people that follow us. Turns out that because they experienced that, they were like, this is so different. We want you guys to be a part of this. And we're like, wow, what an incredible opportunity, right? And that obviously opened so many other doors. But then when we joined the network, right, they're also trying to build their influencers. Now there's a YouTube network as well. And we got some really, really good assets and support from the network. And they were like, we want to listen more about you guys, right? Like, forget about the guests. Like, don't forget about the guests. Obviously, that's a big element. But we want more episodes of you guys with your own thoughts and your own things. And I think we were about episode 300 at that point. So then we started to do a little bit of a balance, bring in some like industry data or some like points of view based on different things. So that's the only reason it changed. Their goal as a network is to increase audience, which is the first audience, right? And then our goal as a podcaster, perfect. Like if they want to come in the bus with us and grow together, perfect. But our main priority, number one, is our relationship with the people that we bring to the show, right? And I'm very proud to say that we can potentially pick up the phone and call maybe 450 out of the 500 conversations that we had, and that person will pick up the phone and have a conversation with us. And these are people that we admire, that we look up to, that have really good either personal or business on the back, and with values that we admire. So what a great way to connect with that. And then if that turns into an opportunity, even better. So I mean, a good example early on was, I think that it was like episode 40. That's like a landmark for one of those canon events for the show. Are you familiar with Todd Brown? So Todd Brown, for those who don't know, wrote many books. At the time, his last book was like the E5 method, and my brother bought it, and he was like making a story on it, and Todd commented on that story, and he immediately sent a video with like, hey Todd, we would love to have you on the pod. It's only 40 episodes, but we love to. And he said, yes, let's do it, right? And this is a person who charges a ton of money for like 1 hour of his time, and he was like our very first like big A player on the show. To the point that Fonzie was calling him Mr. Todd. Hey, Mr. Todd. So we admire this guy. We follow him for years. Like, we've consumed his content. We've read, and he's trained some of the best marketers out there today. And what a conversation he was. And we were able to share a lot of time with him, to the point that we also stayed like 30 more minutes after the interview. And to this point, we still comment in each other, social media, and he responds back, and he at least makes us, think that he remembers us, at least. But at that point, that was the belief changed to where like this vehicle can connect us with anyone in the world, and if we're brave enough, we can ask about anything. But it was a relationship first, always.
Yeah, that's so important, like such an important element of it. And also making the show a memorable experience, because I can tell you, I've been on a lot of podcasts, and sometimes I like run into somebody who's had me on their podcast, and I'm like, I know that person from somewhere, and I can't even place it because it's just like this very, standard underwhelming. Not that you need to like like, I love when people send me handwritten notes, or like Katie Brinkley sends this really awesome water bottle. Like, that stuff is super memorable. One day I'll get there. Sorry,
I'm waiting.
No note or water
I'm
bottle
like, is
for
it
you.
gonna come out?
Yes. Maybe, soon I'll give you like a backward, for backfill. But yeah, that is going to make such a difference in those 450 people answering and saying, "Oh, hey, Louise, what's up? How can I help you?" So the way that I've seen this done a couple of times is people are like, no one cares about the podcast. You tell them that they're going to come on the podcast and they show up, but then they forget that they're there for a podcast, and you just have a sales conversation with them, which really feels like a bait and switch. And they're like, you don't want to take the time to film an episode and publish it if this person isn't valuable to you, I guess, in the way that they're going to give you money. I don't think they say it like
that's
that.
How I feel. I've been on that side. Yeah.
You have. Okay. So did you it's becoming more prolific, and you're the only one I know that does it like this. And it feels like such a missed opportunity to do it this other way, because you have 500 freaking episodes, man. Why wouldn't you want? It's such a win-win to get the content to publish it, and it just seems, I don't know, really sad to have a fake podcast, basically, that you don't care about.
Why wouldn't you publish something that would increase your authority, your relevancy, and your trust with people that are tuning in, right? At the end of the day, that's gonna compound over time, right? And I remember, like, we did an early experiment when, for 3 years, we tried to publish consistently, and we tried to model like Gary Vee's model on like whatever influencer was promoting stuff at the time, right? And we couldn't achieve it. We didn't understand the resources that it was needed, right, to stay consistent at that level. And we have a couple of frameworks that we share. I'm not going to share them right here, but I'm happy if anybody wants them, they can connect with me on social. I can send them over. But we talk about the publishing pyramid, where there's 4 elements that we look at. And whenever we decided to go after that, and we're like, okay, we identified these 4 elements. How do we actually trigger consistency? Because like the one trait that we've seen among all creators is that they're consistent for a long period of time, right? So if we want to do that, that's our first step. Right. And then the second step we decided to do was frequency. So we did a personal challenge where we decided to go live on Facebook for 45 days straight. And something really cool happened. We started seeing that people would send maybe a message here and there, but they would never engage. We call them silent watchers, right? And then on day 15, somebody at 11 p.m. saw one of my videos, right? And he was like, hey, man, like, I would love to invite you to this content talk in my house in a couple nights. And Luca was like just being born at the time, like he was maybe a couple months old. And so I go to Katie and I say, hey babe, do you mind if I go? Like, I know Luca a couple months out, but I think this could be like a really cool opportunity. Well, that opportunity turned into our first 6-figure client ever, right? Our first big project. And it came out of consistency, because the guy told me, he's like, I've been seeing your videos every single day. I was like, why don't you comment? Why don't you like them? And he's like, does it matter? And I was like, it doesn't matter. And it was so incredible, because it was the relationship, it was like the starter of that relationship, right? We call it chispa, right? Like the spark that started that relationship. And then we both synced as people. We both resonated with what we did with each other, and we decided to work together on this project, right? And that was like, man, consistency together with frequency, together with like good relationships, it will move the business forward. So then we did it again a second time, and it worked again. And we were like, man, so now what we need to find is a vehicle, right, to do that consistently. And for us, that meant a podcast. At the time, it was a live show on Facebook, because we were in an office, we had a setup, and we decided that that was going to be the thing that we love doing. And we wanted a little bit of longer time with that person, because we also wanted to learn a ton at the time. So that was what we chose. But we've seen it happen with people that have, listened to our advice. We had a guy in Colombia that decided to do it over Instagram Lives. So same framework over Instagram Live. That was his collaboration, because he didn't have access to equipment, because he didn't have access to a studio. And guess what? He landed his first like $5,000 contract in Colombia with a corporate client that he wanted to work with. And then that led into him buying his own business, starting his own micro co-working space, meeting his wife. Like, this happened a while back. So it's been working for a long time, and it's very exciting because it doesn't matter. You like to write, invite somebody to collaborate based on the relationship, create a quality piece of content together, and still the framework works. It's just the vehicle and how you publish is going to be a little bit different. It just happens that for me it's a podcast because I enjoy having these conversations. But somebody that's very scared of a camera, it's okay. There's other vehicles that we can do. Maybe it's a phone call, right? Maybe, we write together. I don't know. There's many, many ways that we can go about this. But the content itself has to be useful at some point. So if you don't want to publish the podcast, then create something and collaborate on something that you want to publish for either your company benefit, for your benefit, and add value to that person that's giving you their time to come on your platform. It's very valuable, and we got to respect that.
I love that it's so flexible and not a one size fits all. And I have seen this in other forms, like, for example, doing a spotlight on somebody. Hey, I'm going to do a spotlight on you in my social or on my website or whatever. And it does open up the ability to have a conversation. It's so important for it not to be an expectation, though, like you explained, that, either way it's a win, because I get this content, I get to collaborate with this person, I get to connect with this person, and that's always going to create more opportunities than trying to go in and create an opportunity out of it.
At the end of the day, there's people that we brought to the show that maybe it was not an opportunity right away, but 2 years later it did turn into an opportunity. So do we really want to sacrifice that by not providing a good experience to that person? At the end of the day, I would love to go and meet them. We've been on cities where our guests are, and we just send a quick text like, hey, we're here. And they all come and we hang out, and that has so much value versus if this is like a straight cold tactical strategy to go and get more sales for the quick fix, right? It's gonna hurt your company long term, and that's not what we want, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing that, sometimes I say, like, sales is only a numbers game if you treat people like numbers, because nobody wants to be treated like a number. And for anybody that has just close client relationships that are long-term, like 4 years, there's no reason to play this massive volume game. And you're going to work really close with those clients. Like, let's have like a no nightmare client policy. And the only way that's possible is by vetting someone through a relationship-based approach. And I love that you don't have to invite anyone to the conversation either. Like, if they're not a fit, you don't need to feel that pressure. And sometimes if it's a really horrible interview, I don't like to do it, but there are times where I'm like, I can't publish this because it's just a really bad. So you don't have to publish something if it's really bad. Have you ever done that?
We actually haven't had that experience because I think the guardrails that we put in for the show, we're only going to bring people that we want to bring. So we've gotten so many requests over the years, and it's like, look, we have a referral policy in the show. If a previous guest of the show nominates you to be on it, you can be on it. And we've considered charging for those, but at the end of the day, it's like people that just want to push a message that if I'm not interested in it, I'm not sure if I can be 100% excited about that conversation, and then the content's gonna get hurt, and it's not gonna stay true to the essence of the show. And there are certain moments where we considered doing something like that, and the answer was always like, we need to stay true to who we are and like our show. At the end of the day, everything else burns. Like, the show stays because it's like it's our happy place. We get to talk to people that we admire and that we want to connect to. So at that point, if we look at it under those lenses, right? I want to bring X person, they come to the show, I'm excited about the conversation. So in my eyes, that's really good content. In the eyes of the audience, they will vote, and they have voted before where like we think is a really good episode, and then they're like, man, like we just stopped listening at minute 10, and we're like, oh, that's really good feedback on that side. So how do we craft our conversation? How do we craft our conversation skills so we can deliver the value for them? So now it's a playing it. But initially when you launch the show, there's no audience. Nobody's listening, right? So at the end of the day, we got to do it for us. And that's how the show was born. So now, based on HubSpot, for example, when we started running like paid ads to the show and doing these things, we were getting a lot of cold traffic. and a lot of feedback quickly. One of them, which I'm still salty about, but we used to have this background music on the show. It's like a loop song that will play, and it's based on like an inspiration for our show, which was a Venezuelan radio show, and they'll have like this music loop and they'll have these sounds, and that's where you see some of it. But like one of the main producers of the network was like, guys, like if I can give you some feedback, just lose the song, like lose the background music. And I was like, but why? That's part of the identity. And we made a compromise. Fonzie didn't agree with me 100% on the song, and I was like, look, the proof is like nobody has reached out about the music. like to me that sounds like a personal, you don't like
right?
it because nobody else has reached out and said, hey guys, like massively take out the song, right? So but anyways, it's something that I liked, hence I'm excited about it. I'm excited about creating and excited to put it out there, and I think that's one of the key elements that a lot of people ignore. Are we excited about what we're creating? Oh man, I see a lot of people creating a lot of stuff that I assure you they're not excited to create. I'm sure a lot of those TikTok dances people don't want to do. They just feel like they have to do it.
Yeah, there's a lot of dread around creating content. Just like, I have to do this, so here I go. So I love the idea of figuring out what would get you super excited about it. And there are so many possibilities there, right? Like you could wear wigs. You could have people wear crowns. You could, have one of the most interesting questions is like, to me, is like, what was your last meal?
So good.
I think it's yeah, and I've been on shows where they ask like really unique questions that are fun like that. And so to have that spirit behind it hopefully inspires some of the people listening. And there is something that you said about charging for guests that I think is important to touch on. I remember when I was first getting into podcasting and Katie introduced me to this very well-known guy in the podcast industry. And she was like, you should come on a show. And he was like, yeah, it'll be $5,000. And I was like, I can never, ever, ever think of that person in a good light ever again.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like it's forever ruined for me. So think about how you're making people feel. Are they just money? Do they not offer you some point of leverage that's like a personal benefit? Like make it fun for you, make it fun for them and uplifting. And this is such a fantastic strategy. And that's a great stopping point for us. And we've reached the end of yet another episode of Sales is Not a Dirty Word. And Luis, you are very soon, like there's a wait list for a group where you're going to take them through creating a podcast that inspires them and lights them up and also brings in clients in this way that feels like a really great win-win,
absolutely.
right?
So we actually talked a little bit about this in Capshavians Live, this event in Orlando, with a couple of the attendees that were there, and they were super interested to be a part of it. And to be fully transparent, we've done workshops on this before one-on-one, but it's the first time that we're actually going to teach it in a group environment. So we're still debating, is this going to be free? Is it going to be like low ticket to make sure that, we get the most amount of feedback? So if you are interested in going through this with us in a group environment, just send me a message on social media at Luisda Creates, Luisda Creates, and we can put you on that waiting list and let you know as soon as it happens. It's probably going to happen within the next 4 weeks. And I'm excited to bring this on. So this is something that, we work with our production clients whenever they come like, hey, how do we actually generate some revenue or some traction on conversations from our podcast right off the bat? This is the number one thing that we recommend them to do. And they get results real quick. So I hope if you're interested to come in and experience that with us, I'll be honored.
Yeah. And so I hope you guys caught that they've run it a few times with people and it's gotten great results every time. And now they're going to run with it in a group setting. So definitely, if you're looking for a way to bring in clients that feels inbound, feels high quality, doesn't feel like you're salesy and, pushy and gross, and also is fun, and if you like conversation, then definitely reach out to Luis. And he's such a kind person who's really going to care and take care of his people. So thank you so much for coming on, Luis, and thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time.
Have a good one.